Hello friends, welcome back to another episode of our I Do Work Here Lady, where employees get mistaken for regular Joes. In this episode you'll hear about a GameStop employee who is ignored by a customer, a supervisor who's overlooked because she's a woman, and we'll finish off with another wholesome story that starts in a hardware store. I hope you stay for all the stories today and subscribe for future videos. This story is titled But I Do Work Here. This happened several years ago when I worked at GameStop in college. It was near closing time on a Sunday, so it was just my manager and me. My manager was working on paperwork in the back room while I was putting away game cases. A customer walks in. I greet him and ask if there's anything I can help him find. He brushes me off and says, "No, you wouldn't know what I'm looking for." Okay, I respond. "Well, I'm here if you have any questions." He walks off to look at the games, and I go back to work. I grab more game cases to put away. He goes over to the PlayStation 3 wall where I just was and picks up Dragon Age 2, which is one of my favorite games. Out of excitement, I say, "That's a great choice." To which he replies, "You don't know anything about this. You don't even work here." GameStop doesn't have uniforms, but I have a lanyard with a GameStop name badge, and I'm literally the only other person in the store. Before I can reply, my manager comes out of the back room and starts counting down the registers. The customer goes up to him with the Dragon Age 2 case and says, "Have you played this game before?" My manager points to me and says, "No, but that's one of her favorite games. She can tell you all about it." The customer bought the game and left without even looking at me. Sad face. Usually, regular customers don't greet people and ask if there's anything they can help you find when you walk into a store, nor do they stack game cases on shelves for fun when they don't work there. Either this guy is completely clueless, or he believes women can't have anything to do with video games at all. This one's titled, "I Do Work Here, Sir." About 5 years ago, I worked at the International Center of a university in the United States. To give some background, I'm an Asian female, 5 feet 1 inch in height. Though I was in my early 30s at the time, I still looked quite young, and was often mistaken for being in my early 20s or late teens. My main job responsibilities were recruitment, training, and management of about a dozen international student interns who worked at the front desk. We'd been swamped that morning, so I hadn't had time to go out to eat lunch. I got a sandwich from our campus vending machine and sat down in the break room. The break room was always cold due to the air conditioning blasting through, so I put on a comfy university jacket I kept in my desk to wear during breaks. I kept the break room door open to keep an ear out for the front desk and let my interns know they could still pop in to ask any questions. A few minutes later, I heard a man's voice yell something along the lines of, No, you do not understand. You're stupid, stupid." The childish outburst exclaimed in a grown male voice made me immediately stand up and rush to the front desk area without even remembering to take my jacket off. The man was literally wagging his finger at my intern and yelling while almost comically stomping his feet. I interjected his tantrum, introduced myself as the intern supervisor, gave my name and position, and told him I could assist him with the issue. The man immediately looked me up and down and scoffed, "No." He then turned right back to the intern and asked her to call the supervisor, as he needed to ask someone who actually works here, not just some young girl like the intern who sits at the front desk repeating nonsense. It wasn't my first rodeo with unnecessarily angry students, so I calmly gestured for my intern to step away and planted myself directly in front of him. That made him change his rant toward me, saying, "Listen, I know you Chinese want to help each other, but my issue is urgent, so I need to see your supervisor." He emphasized supervisor, making a dialing phone gesture, and added, "He can sign my I-20 form." Yes, both my intern and I were Asian, but no, neither of us were Chinese. I hate it when people over-enunciate when speaking to me. My thoughts often immediately go to, "English is my first language, jerk," as it's evident by the fact that I just spoke it to you. Also, it pissed me off that he assumed the supervisor would be male. I did my best to remain calm, however, as it was my job to help people. To confirm the issue, I said, "Oh, so you're here to get an I-20 travel signature. If you go online and submit the form, you'll—" He interrupted me and said, "No, damn it, you don't understand." He then proceeded in a rapid rant, saying I must get a real staff member who actually works here instead of giving him the same instructions again because he needed his paper signed now. He wouldn't be able to come back later for a signature because he was leaving on a road trip, and surely the school didn't want to make him, a student who pays such high tuition, do that. "Do you know how much money I give this school?" he asked. "Do little girls from China even understand how expensive this luxury trip was to book? More background: university students in the United States on an I-20 visa need an updated signature on their form every once in a while to travel abroad and return. I hated it when entitled students asked for expedited services just for convenience. Many students planned ahead and made requests on time, and it wasn't fair to expedite the process for whoever asked the loudest. I was actually the one who had the power to approve very limited last-minute travel signature requests, but obviously, this guy and his luxury vacation weren't going to qualify for expedited services just for being a jerk. I interrupted him by raising my hand to stop his rapid, ongoing rant. I said again, "Sir, I'm the supervisor in this area. Let me continue, and I'll address your issue. My intern has given you the instructions for the I-20 signatures already. You're saying you want expedited service simply because you don't want to come back to the office another day to pick it up, and that you gave this school a lot of money. Unfortunately, that can't be arranged. So, please go home, submit the online form like all of our F1 students, and wait 2 to 3 business days for a response." He started to speak again, but I put my hand out again to stop him, maintained eye contact, and picked up the phone. I said, "Also, sir, if you don't leave immediately, I'll be calling campus security to escort you out of the building for harassing me and my staff members. But before you go, just so you know, I'll be noting in your form that you're missing several days from school, as you've kindly told us of your planned weeks of absence. Please be ready to submit documentation of why this was an excused absence from your classes. Lastly, do not insult my staff again or you will be banned from entering this office." He stood there, stunned, for a few seconds, then huffed and left. This may not have been the best solution to a yucky situation, but it was actually the first time I kicked a student out of the office, so I was a bit shaken up by it. The best part of the story, though, is what happened next. My boss at the time, a woman in her 40s, walked in a few minutes later and asked me to come talk to her. I thought I was in trouble for some reason, but she actually asked if everything was okay because she had met a rude international student outside. Apparently, the rude man had run into my boss outside and asked her if she happened to know who the boss of the girl in there was and if she knew how he could talk to him. My boss said she was the supervisor of the woman who works in there and asked if she could help. He was rude enough that my boss actually called campus security to escort him off the campus property. She told me that next time, the moment he raises his voice, I do not need to engage him in conversation but can just kick him out immediately, as he was forewarned that's what would happen next. This story had a bit of everything: entitlement, racism, misogyny, and minor revenge, all melted into one lovely story. I'm glad he didn't get what he wanted simply because of his entitlement and raising his voice. When will some people learn that getting loud isn't going to get you much unless you want embarrassment and a security escort? In this case, he got both. This one's titled, "I'm Just Here for the Matching Outfits." I used to work at one of those home improvement warehouses. We all wore either a red and blue trimmed vest or apron with the company name huge across the back and smaller on the chest. I worked in the tools and hardware department. I'm a woman, which is a problem for a lot of men, but that's a different story. I was in my 30s, and I love my job, so I was usually happy. I was asked anywhere between 3 and 10 times a week, "Do you work here?" Of course it was customer service, so I generally would just smile and say, "Yes, what can I help you with today?" After about 2 years of this, I was bored of it, so I thought I'd try to change it up. I had just decided to try a new response when a really sweet lady approached and said, "Excuse me, do you work here?" I replied, "No, I just got a new vest. So I decided to come here and hang out with people who have the same fashion sense." I said it playfully with a smile, and she said, "Oh, I'm sorry," and started to walk away. I replied, "No, please, I'm sorry. Yes, I do work here. How can I help you?" She looked at me, then at my vest, and I swear you could see the light turn on. She started giggling. She had recently gotten a divorce, and her ex-husband did all the manly stuff around the house. She was almost afraid of using a screwdriver. She became a regular. I was told by one of the front-end supervisors that she would walk in, ask if I was there, and if not, she would try to find out when I was working, then leave. It didn't matter if she wanted a faucet, lighting, or a box of screws. Shortly before I left the store for good, we went over to the lumber section and started looking at patios she could build with her new friend's assistance. I was so happy I made her giggle. Oh yes, I did keep using that reply, and it usually got a chuckle and giggle. Another wholesome story. What a way to make a new friend! This story is titled, "Don't Gossip in Line." I used to work at a fast food restaurant, and for a while I took a break from work so I could focus on my family and schoolwork for a semester. I still went to the restaurant to eat sometimes and catch up with my friends who worked there. One day, I was standing in line at the store when this lady came up and stood way too close behind me. I tried to scoot up a little, but I didn't want to get in someone else's personal space, so I didn't go very far. She proceeded to move as well, standing just as close to me as she was before. Now, the restaurant was a little short on employees at the front that day, so the line was moving slower than usual. The annoying lady tried to start small talk with me, complaining about the employees. She said things like, "The employees here are so lazy and I don't know why I still eat here. They need to hire more and better staff. My food is terrible every time I eat here." She just went on, and I tried my best to ignore her. Meanwhile, the line continued to inch forward, and after what felt like forever, one of the managers finally noticed me and said, "Hey Opie, how have you been? It's good to see you." I took the opportunity to step out of line, give my friend a hug, and get away from that crazy lady. We talked for about 30 seconds, and then she went back to working the drive-thru, and I moved back to my place in line. Magically, the lady wasn't standing so close to me anymore and said nothing else to me the rest of the time. This story is titled, "Bank Customer Did Not Expect Her to Be the Manager." In my first banking job, the branch manager was a 23-year-old Asian woman. The branch office where I worked was in a wealthy neighborhood with mostly retirees. We had a lot of sweet old ladies who just loved coming into our branch because, out of the 6 people working there, it was all women and 1 man. The 1 man was a bank teller, so all the bankers, the manager, and the assistant manager were all young women. We did not do this on purpose, and it was only like this for a few months. But the old ladies loved it because, back in their day, women were the secretaries, not the bankers. Anyway, some of the little old men did not care for it as much. One time, this man came storming in, pissed off about a $3 charge, and his accountant said, "I want to speak to your manager. Is he in?" I looked at him and said, "Our manager is here. Let me call her." The look on his face when he saw our bombshell of a manager come strutting out to meet him was priceless. This story is titled, "I Work Here, I Promise." I work in a home improvement store and typically work nights as a stalker, so I can see the confusion, but it's funny nonetheless. The night crew tends to have a more relaxed dress code. I was wearing a polo shirt and jeans. My manager called us in early because some holiday boxes had arrived unexpectedly. He told us to leave our work aprons in the lockers so we would be less likely to be interrupted. I was still holding onto an inventory device. A customer saw through this, however, and asked me to get something they needed at the top of the overstock area. I was ahead in what I was doing, so I figured I would help them out. I grabbed the employees-only ladder, and I'm about to go up when I hear yelling from below. It was what looked like the front-end manager. She told me to come down and demanded to know what I was doing, saying that customers are not allowed on ladders in the store. I told her that I worked there and, as proof, showed her my phone, which was logged into the system. We just kind of laughed, and I told her my manager told me not to wear my apron. We still tease each other about it. This one's titled, "Surprise, I'm Back." Back when I was taking a couple of years off school, I worked in a medium-sized upscale restaurant. During my time there, I think I was well-liked enough. I ended up dating a Kyo worker and becoming close friends with a couple of managers. Now, as anyone who's worked in a restaurant can tell you, being friends with the managers can get you some perks, things like free drinks after work, preferential scheduling, better big parties, etc. This infuriated one CO worker, we'll call her Karen. Karen was not well liked, but she was honestly a good waiter. She was super nice to the customers, but once she was out of sight of the dining floor, she'd always swear and talk trash. Karen did not like me, and she made it very obvious. She would claim that I was sleeping with the managers for better tables, and while it was not true, I did, on average, get better shifts than most. The rest of the staff noticed, but didn't really care since I took 2 terrible shifts a week, Sunday night and Monday double. Now, Christmas time rolled around, and we had 3 event rooms, and everyone wanted the Christmas holiday and work parties. They were always set menu, lots of booze, and large auto-gratuity checks, and you could double to triple a normal night's work off of one table. These were coveted tables, so of course, Karen would complain every time I got one, and she didn't. You could taste her passive aggressiveness in the air when she was around. It got to the point where the owner took over the scheduling to try to even things out. Even this didn't stop her because, obviously, I was sleeping with the owner too. Fast forward 8 months and I've enrolled in grad school and will no longer be working at the restaurant. These were the happiest days of Karen's miserable life. My school was in the same town, so I'd still pop over to hang out on Sunday night for a free drink and half-off meal. One night, a couple of months later, I came in like normal, but on the end of a Saturday night. Both managers, my significant other, and the owner were there, as well as Karen. I'm having my beer when Karen came over and said, "Oh, hey there, Opie, didn't recognize you." I said, "Hi, Karen, how have you been?" I always tried to be nice, and she said, "The restaurant has been really busy since you left. Everyone's really happy to come into work since the shifts have gotten better and fair. Besides your significant other, people here are in a much better mood after you left." I replied, "Oh, really?" She said, "Oh, yes, and there are so many good parties this year, and I'm lined up to get the best ones as I'm now head waiter since you don't work here anymore." Me, grinning my tail off, said, "Actually, Karen, I do work here. I came in tonight to see if the owner needed any seasonal help." He does, and since the menu has changed and I don't know any of the new dishes, I'm just going to be working parties. At this point, her cheery demeanor that she used in front of the customers changed, and she went fuming over to talk to the owner. I sat back and enjoyed my beer that much more. It was true. I told the owner I could work until school started, or the holiday rush died, since he was a bit short-staffed and wouldn't have to train me on the basics. I started right away and picked up some very nice holiday cash. Luckily, I was never scheduled to work a party with Karen. This one's titled, "My Own Manager Didn't Recognize Me." I used to work part-time at this fancy clothes store around the corner from my university. One day, we had a staff meeting scheduled after the store closed. I wasn't working that day, and since it started 30 minutes after I finished class, I didn't have time to go home and change. I came straight from uni. I study music, and my regular style at the time was very different from what I wore for work. On this particular day, I was wearing black denim shorts over ripped black tights and black platform combat boots with a black singlet and a blue flannel shirt tied around my waist. I also had black eyeshadow, black lipstick, and electric blue eyeliner on. None of my co-workers had seen me outside of work, so when I walked up to the store just as it was closing, my manager came up to me and told me that I would have to leave because the register was already closed. I didn't quite know what to say, so I stared at her for a second and then said, "You don't recognize me, do you?" As soon as I spoke, she realized who I was, much to the surprise of both her and my CO workers. The whole thing was made funnier by the fact that she used to regularly text or call me last minute if they were short-staffed, asking if I could come in for an hour or two since she knew I was just around the corner. I pretty much always said no unless I had something else on after uni that I was already wearing that looked normal. She rarely asked again after that. This one's titled, "Actually, You Do Need to Talk to Me." There was no big scene, and no police were called. It was just an interesting story. I was the front desk manager of a hotel. I was in charge of guest relations, as well as the front staff. I did all the hiring, firing, and training staff, and my general manager basically just gave me freedom to run my area as I saw fit, intervening only when necessary. On this day, I was alone at the front desk, covering for an employee who was running late. My general manager was standing next to me in dirty, paint-covered scrubs, as she'd been helping the housekeeping staff with some minor maintenance that day. I'm a woman of 32 at the time, so I looked considerably younger. So, this woman walked in while we were discussing the events of our day and preparing key cards for the evening arrivals. She was carrying a folder and pulling out a resume as she approached the counter. I stopped what I was doing and walked toward her to greet her. I said, "Good afternoon. Welcome to the hotel. My name's Jen." The lady, in a condescending tone as if I were a child, said, "Oh, hello, dear. I have some important business, and I need someone who knows what's what around here, like the manager." I stood shocked for a moment as she approached my manager at the desk. I walked back to stand next to her. The lady said, "Hi, my name is Karen. I see online that you're hiring for a front desk agent, and I would like to apply for said position. As you'll see from my resume," and my boss cut her off at this moment while taking the resume from her hand. My boss said, "I need to stop you right there. I don't do the hiring for the front desk, but she does," and she pointed at me. She's also the front desk manager and is in charge of scheduling and performing all interviews and has the final say of who gets hired. As she said this, I walked up close to her and she handed me the resume with a smile before walking off. I smiled at the lady, who had now gone pale and pretty much had to pick up her jaw from the floor. I said as I was saying, "My name is Jen and I am in charge of hiring. Are you looking for full-time or part-time?" We had a brief conversation about her skills and experience, and during the whole time, she couldn't look me in the face. I sent her on her way. I never called her back for an interview. Not because of her actions, but because I had more qualified applicants to consider. I did pass on her resume to the head housekeeper, who heard the story and decided to call her for an interview for the hell of it. the lady refused the offer. So let me share my opinion on these story. Story 1, but I do work here. The customer's dismissal of the employee based on gender stereotypes was frustrating, especially since she was clearly working and wearing a name badge. The manager's support was a nice touch, but it's a shame the customer didn't acknowledge her expertise. This highlights how biases can blind people to obvious cues, a missed opportunity for the customer to learn something. Story 2, I do work here, sir. The student's entitled outburst, laced with racism and misogyny, was infuriating. The supervisor's calm yet firm response was perfect, shutting him down while maintaining professionalism. I love that the boss reinforced her authority by calling security. This story is a satisfying takedown of arrogance and a reminder to treat everyone with respect. Story 3, I'm just here for the matching outfits. This is a delightful, wholesome story. The employee's playful response to the "Do you work here?" question was clever, and the connection she built with the customer was heartwarming. It's refreshing to see a positive interaction that turned into a regular friendship. A great example of how humor can brighten someone's day. Story 4, don't gossip in line. The lady's rude gossip about the staff backfired hilariously when the manager recognized the narrator. Her sudden silence and distance in line were perfect karma. This story shows how complaining carelessly can lead to embarrassment, especially when you're standing next to someone connected to the staff. Story 5, bank customer did not expect her to be the manager. The man's assumption that the manager must be male was laughably outdated, and his reaction to the young female manager was priceless. The all-women team dynamic added a fun layer to this story. It's satisfying to see stereotypes shattered, and the manager's confidence made it even better. Story 6, I work here. I promise a funny mix-up caused by a relaxed dress code and an overzealous front-end manager. The narrator's quick resolution with the inventory device was great, and the ongoing teasing shows a good workplace vibe. This story is a lighthearted reminder that appearances can be deceiving, especially in casual work settings. Story 7, surprise, I'm back. Karen's petty jealousy and trash-talking made her downfall so satisfying. The narrator's return to steal her coveted party shifts was a brilliant twist. The owner's fairness in scheduling and the narrator's grin while breaking the news made this a perfect petty revenge story. Karma tastes sweet. Story 8, my own manager didn't recognize me. The manager's failure to recognize the narrator in her non-work attire was hilarious, especially since she often called her for last-minute shifts. The contrast between her music student style and work persona added to the humor. This is a fun, relatable story about how context can throw people off. Story 9, actually, you do need to talk to me. The applicant's condescending attitude toward the front desk manager was a big mistake. The general manager's quick correction and the applicant's embarrassment were perfectly executed. I appreciate that the manager stayed professional despite the rudeness. A great lesson in not underestimating someone based on appearances. I hope you enjoyed this story and the 2 others in this episode. If you aren't subscribed, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next episode. See you guys in the next one.